We've got a host of fantastic speakers, and we will also give you the opportunity to talk to one another, which I think is the most... Perhaps I'll go on to technical next. We have attempted today, when I say we, I have attempted to take this into the 21st century. So we are going to live stream some of today. So those that can't be here can see and get involved. And there's also a little technical bit as well. Those of you that received an email from me, if you didn't, please don't worry. We're trialing something called Slido this morning, which allows you to be completely involved today. So there are two different parts to it. I've posed some questions on there, which I will open up a little bit later. But also on Slido, if you tap in 4530, which is our event code, I'll leave that up there for a little bit. You can get involved. You can pose some questions to us and the various speakers. If you've got something you would like to say, just let us know. The other little bit of housekeeping, we are in Monmouthshire County Council's amphitheatre this morning. It won't be as formal as the setup looks, so please, if you've got any questions, your input is absolutely valuable. What you will need to do, if you want to speak, is to press the little button in front of you, which turns the microphone on, and we can hear you. The camera may well swivel to you, so best pose, okay? In terms of housekeeping, those of you that haven't been here today, toilets are opposite, and also the other side of the landing. We are going to have a tea coffee break at around 10:30, 11 o'clock this morning. There are biscuits, you'll be glad to hear. There's a lot of fruit on the landing as well, which lots of people passed this morning, so I expect that eaten up this afternoon. In terms of the format, we are going to hear from Peter Davis in just 2 minutes. We're also got very kindly, I'm offered, I'm not quite sure is the word, accepted, I think. 3 volunteers have accepted our offer to share their story today, and I think that is superb. I hope that that we listen, that we focus, and their challenge is really well accepted. Without further ado, I'd like to pass across to Peter Davis, who is our Chief Officer for Resources. Peter has been an absolute advocate and champion for volunteering across our organisation and been instrumental in some of the changes that we've made here, certainly from a leadership perspective. So, Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Owen, and can I just welcome everybody today. It's absolutely fantastic to see the turnout today, and such a variety of people coming here today to contribute. I just look across the room, I see partners, we've got school governors here, people from within the teams in Monmouthshire who are supporting Owen in terms of the volunteering effort here in the council. So it's absolutely fantastic to see, and beyond the thanks for you coming, again a massive thanks to all of those out there that continue to make Monmouthshire what it is. Huge volunteering effort, volunteers who work closely with the authority, and those who just do it independently and make our communities what they are. We've got a very rich and vibrant county. And it's testament to the huge amounts of social capital that we've got out there. Again, huge thanks. I think as Owen's touched on, today's conference is, I think, timely actually. I'll touch on some of that now in a minute or two. But again, looking at the programme that Owen's put together, it's really mixed and varied. I think you're right, Owen. Fantastic that we've got 3 speakers today who bring their own experiences. Each of which will be very, very different and inspirational in their own right, and sort of demonstrates exactly why people come forward and actually choose to volunteer. The value that volunteers get out of that for themselves, but more importantly and most importantly, the contribution that they give to others. Today is a great opportunity for you to get involved. I've been speaking to Owen ahead of the conference, and he's right. And I think some of the technical sort of things that you've introduced, let's hope that they go well. The fact that it's live stream allows us to sort of reach out to beyond those that are physically present here today. And I'm assuming, Owen, that you'll be sort of capturing this for people who maybe haven't got the opportunity to digest it today, and maybe want to listen to particularly the speakers at some future point. But can I please urge you to contribute? I hate these things. I've been working for the authority for 15 years now, and if I've got the opportunity, because my voice is such, I'm happy to turn them off. But use them because it helps the people who are accessing via live stream. Don't be shy. And I think the important thing, really, I pick up on your point of challenge. I think it's a really important one. We can't be complacent in terms of, particularly as an authority and particularly working with our partners, we can't be complacent in terms of the volunteering effort and actually supporting it, recognising where some of the deficiencies and gaps are, and actually being quite grown up about that and understanding where we're falling foul. I think some of our most recent experiences, our most recent reflections, and Owen will know because he's brought a conversation back into our leadership team in the last few months, and it was opportune. We brought our county that serves forward as a programme in 2015 under our former Deputy Chief Executive, Kelly Byrne. And she delivered her own inspirational message, and bringing Owen to the fore with a wider team to really galvanise the volunteer effort from within the council. And we've made some real strides over the last few years, and the list is endless, and testament to Owen and the wider team and all the work of the partners that we've worked with over time. We've got I think a really balanced volunteer policy and a strategy that accompanies that. We've had the development of the toolkit, the volunteer management digital platform, which was an interesting one in getting in place, but we got there. The support offering in terms of ongoing volunteer training, and I guess of late the success in terms of the ambassador program that's been established. So it's a good moment just to sort of stop and reflect on the gains that have been made and the support mechanisms that have been put in place. But again, I reiterate my point. We can't be complacent, and we've got to be very open and have a very open conversations to understand where we're maybe falling short and looking to respond and understand what our role as a council is in that. I've talked about social capital, and it's ever present in and across our communities, and I guess it's important for me to just touch on, if I just reflect on that horrible title that I have of Chief Officer for Resources. It even feels awful coming out of my mouth, but I think I hold an important role just in terms of the authority's finances, and much like our partners, we have ongoing challenges with funding. It's very, very difficult. The last few years have been very, very difficult. The years to come will be very, very difficult. That's a given. And volunteering, if it wasn't a critical and important part of our DNA 3 or 4 years ago, and now, it certainly is and will be going forward. I think the most recent reflections that we've had as a leadership team have brought that back to the fore. I think changes that have probably been taking place, being slightly candid around Owen, and the team that supports him, it's probably diluted some of our focus of late around volunteering. I'm sort of happy to say that. However, the important thing is that we've recognised and realised that, and we've brought changes forward to actually bolster that and actually to give Owen back some of the focus that he previously had around volunteering. So I think that's one significant step for me forward based on the reflections that we've had. The other bit I think that we've been grappling with, and particularly of late, is around compliance. And again, it's a horrible word to introduce when we talk about volunteering, because volunteers come forward for very good reason, because they have a passion. The unfortunate bit is that we've got to make them safe, and we've got to have obviously processes and systems that wrap around them. I think the thing that we've learned over the last couple of years, and whilst audit has its place, and it does, we've got to recognise and realise that things are going to have a balance. We can't put in these very onerous systems and processes such that it gets to a point where when volunteers choose to want to come forward, it's a real ordeal, it's a real pain. The bureaucracy of a system actually maybe dissuades them from actually coming forward. So again, and we know we've had the conversation, we've got to get that balance right. And so again, for today, it's important just to hear and listen back as to some of the things that you're maybe observing that we maybe need to make adjustment around. So again, it's just continual growth and evolution. But really, just final remarks. And again, as I started, massive thanks for today, for coming, and please contribute and help Owen's job, make it easier going forward. And again, in terms of, the strength of relationships that we have with our partner agencies, which, I'm hugely grateful for, and I'm hugely grateful to Owen as well, in terms of the efforts that he's made in recent years to really strengthen those. So please enjoy today, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Just a tiny bit from me before we hand over to our first volunteer speaker. What Peter's just outlined is, and mentioned something called Monmouthshire County That Serves, and I'm conscious that lots of people in here probably won't know what that is, what the vision is, if you like. So I just wanted to spend 2 minutes just reiterating that. So what I think perhaps here in Monmouthshire we stick out. I've been doing some work across Wales at the moment, and I think just to add to what Peter just said, we should be very proud as a county and as an organisation of what we do. We are different. The sheer amount of volunteers that support their communities because they care is unbelievable. What we've got with a county that serves is a simple principle, which is based on the fact that every single person in our county has got something to give. We and our partners have got a role to create the conditions for that to happen. Sometimes we need to create things, we need to provide nudges, but ultimately we need to help people to get involved. Volunteering is fantastic. It has many benefits to individuals, to our organisation, and to the wider community. But sometimes we need a little bit of help when we're volunteering. I've certainly been there. What we need to do is to offer that help and to introduce a conversation, and that is Monmouthshire County That Serves. It is not just volunteering, it is people in their communities doing their bit. Not everyone identifies with the term volunteer, and some of you may not. Some of you may, within your personal lives, be doing things within the community that perhaps you do or don't see that. What we want to do is to match people's motivations with priorities. We have priorities around, children getting the best possible start in life. We have got challenges around people in our beautiful county that are socially isolated. We do want to give people opportunities, and I think there are people here today, volunteers and staff, that are making a difference to that. That is a county that serves. So my focus, as Peter said, is now back on that. I think it is right, it is fitting. We believe in volunteering and community involvement, and for us that's a long-term thing. That's not just a short-term investment. This is about, we've got some volunteer programs in the room, youth service, leisure, the schools that are investing in young people at a very early age and teaching them that doing your bit in your community is the right thing to do. And I think that is fantastic. We've got existing programs, Countryside, our litter champions with Sue at the back there, providing little ways for people to do their bit. And I think that's excellent. Across all of our departments, we support volunteering. Sometimes that's direct. So volunteers are recruited into roles that support us. Sometimes, like Parkrun, that are here today, our role is much more light touch. Perhaps we need to help with access and things, but actually what you're doing within that community is helping people. Monmouthshire County Youth Service is about people helping people, quite simply. And that's our focus, if you like. I think you've only got to look at the recent publicity around the young people that are out of school, and whether you agree with that or not, the principle is those young people care about something and they're willing to do something about it. I think for us, and a county that serves, it's about harnessing that and giving people the opportunity to get involved. I'm conscious that within the room there are volunteers, there are colleagues that support people that may be looking for volunteering opportunities, and there are those that are developing or have volunteering programs. What we want to do today is to bring you together and to invite that conversation to take place. What we've also got is some work, as Peter alluded to, on the barriers to volunteering. We create some of those barriers as an organisation, and I think we acknowledge that, and we're on a journey, a mission maybe, to sort that. But also our partners in the room that support us with that, Volunteering for Wellbeing, Gavo at the back, we're part of a group within Monmouthshire that is looking at ways in which we can improve things for volunteers and for you as colleagues. We also know that volunteering's changed. And I hear time and time again, people that have got fantastic skills. They're so rich in skills, but they haven't got the time to commit. I think we need to look as an organisation and as a county at the ways in which modern volunteering happens. Sometimes you need to bring people in for a very small amount of time. And I think perhaps Goitra's Fruit Cutting Club is a fantastic example of that. Perhaps that's something that you'll touch on in a bit. We need to work out how we get people involved and how we keep them happy. Because what we know through the surveys that we do is that over 70% of our volunteers have influenced other friends and family and people in their community to get involved. So quite simply, we keep our volunteers happy. We've got no issue with recruitment. I think what I'll do is invite Catherine to come down to the front, if that's okay, and perhaps join Peter, or swap, either way, if you need to sneak. Take a seat, I'll just. So, Catherine was corralled, bullied, yes, all of those into coming today, and there's a very real reason for that. What I know is that what Catherine offers Goitra School, and indeed our county, is unbelievable. The hours, the skills, the gifts that she shares with us means that has been bullied into this, and apologies for that. But if you would like to share with us your thoughts, Catherine, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Borodar, good morning. Owen's asked me to speak about my experiences as a volunteer and how I got into it, but the much more interesting aspect is how school has gone on a journey to embrace volunteers and how it's transformed really what we've done. So I will talk a little bit about myself in the beginning, but the much more interesting part is the school's journey. So I grew up locally in Crossy-Killiog and went to the comprehensive there, and despite being in a family with generations of teachers, I decided to go into the law. I trained and practiced in a city law firm for many years, specialising in employment law. But I desperately wanted to find it fulfilling, and I didn't really. I took on pro bono clients. I volunteered at the West London Law Centre in the evenings, but I knew I hadn't really found my niche. So when we found the opportunity to return to Wales with my husband's job, we jumped at it. Or should I say, I jumped at it, and my English husband had his arm twisted. When I came back, I worked in the civil service down in Newport in the Office for National Statistics for a bit. And it gave me a valuable insight into policy work, working with trade unions, and really doing the nitty-gritty of what I'd been teaching and guiding my clients to do for years. It was a real eye-opener. After my second son was born, I had quite a difficult decision to make. My dad had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my grandparents were both very poorly. I came to the point in my career when I thought, I'll always regret not taking a break, not taking a pause. And the civil service are very progressive in that sense and allowed me to take a career break. And it's not something I've ever regretted doing. So whilst on this career break, my eldest son started school. I took the opportunity to throw myself into school life. I joined the PTA, and very quickly an opening arose in the governing body. Within my first year of being elected as a parent governor, the then chair, Councillor Brian Jones, took me to one side and asked me if I'd be interested in becoming chair. On reflection, I think I was somewhat hoodwinked into going for the role. I think he said a couple of meetings a year, not very much, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. But I was happy to embrace it. I felt that I had an opportunity to share my skills with the school, to share the experience I developed during my professional life, to make a difference to children's lives and their education, and to make the most of the period that I was on career leave. It seemed a perfect opportunity. Some 7, nearly 8 years later, I've not gone back to work, and I'm still Chair of Governors at Coitravale Primary School. It's challenging, it's stimulating, but at times it comes with a heavy burden of responsibility. It's introduced me to lots of elements that I didn't have much experience in before. Finance is a great example. It's also been a very steep learning curve in terms of education. It's also enabled me to pursue other avenues. I was one of a few governors across Wales who were trained and recruited to be a lay inspector for Estyn. So this has provided me with valuable experience to bring back to my school, but also opportunities for me for future career when I do go back to work. So that's my story of how I got into volunteering, but the school story is really what I wanted to concentrate on. When I became chair, I was very passionate about considering volunteering in school. We didn't have much in the way of a formula for volunteering. We'd have parents who'd come along on trips, but we hadn't really embraced it very much. So one of the first things I looked at was how we could gain back some time for staff. What could we do more smartly? The very first thing we looked at, Owen's already mentioned it, was the fruit parties for foundation phase. This is a really small thing, but actually it's made a terrific amount of difference. The fruit parties are where children in the foundation phase eat fruit, vegetables, round in a circle time, very important kind of shared experience, but also engaging a love of fresh fruit and vegetables. When we looked at it, 2 teaching assistants were taking 15 to 20 minutes in the morning preparing fruit for the entire foundation phase. It's such an important part of the day, but surely there was a better way we could do this. So I suggested we look at volunteers. We didn't at that point have the Kinetic system, the database, which now means that would be so much easier to find volunteers. So we were literally haranguing people at the gate, requests out on social media, trying to see if we could spread the word to come in and literally devote 15-20 minutes following drop-off. So trying to make it as easy as possible to get people through the door. They could then do the fruit cutting and then go off to the rest of their day. We now have a large bank of parent volunteers that come in and do that every day, and it's freed up that teaching assistant time to work one-to-one, to work with intervention groups, to do an extra read. It was a complete no-brainer situation. The next thing we looked at was something that I asked the head what would make a real difference, and what she said was reading. Despite staff's best efforts, there are still a number of children that are never listened to at home. There are also some children that just need extra practice. Again, we went out and sought members of the community. We now have a large bank of reading volunteers who come in and listen to children speak in English and in Welsh. So we've harnessed the skills within our community. We've given some guidance at the beginning to those volunteers on how to help and encourage, but the most valuable contribution they make is to give their time. The latest phase of our volunteer project was to look at lunchtimes and after school. we saw that children could benefit from a bit more structure at lunchtime, and that there were some fantastic skills in the community which could be shared. Community volunteers now run gardening clubs, chess clubs. I do a debating club. We've got a tag rugby club that 2 community volunteers come in to do. It's a growing area that we'd like to embrace even more, because we know those skills are there. We just need to bring them into school. How did we make this work? Well, there's one easy answer, and she's called Mrs. Zammit, and she's sitting over there. Mrs. Zammit is a force of nature, our school administrator. I brought her here today so she could feel part of this conference, but also to publicly thank her for everything that she does. Look, she's given me daggers. We now have an army of 40 committed volunteers, and Mrs. Zammit ruthlessly culls that army. So there are 40 volunteers that come into school on a regular basis to support us, which I think is phenomenal. All those 40 have been through the safe recruitment processes, are DBS checked, level 1 safeguarding training, and they're committed. And the reason that it works so well is because Mrs. Zammit ensures that it's organised, it's well planned. For instance, with the reading volunteers, she puts folders together with the books, a record of what the children are reading. She gets that all ready for their arrival. I think that's so important. Volunteers' time is really precious. And so they want to arrive feeling expected, planned for, and valued, and she does that. She also communicates really well, which again I think is really vital. It makes our volunteers feel important. So if there are alternative arrangements to be made or changes to plans, she lets them know. And that open dialogue means that they then in turn communicate with us when they can't make it. We try to remember as much as we possibly can to tell them how important they are to us and to thank them. And we try to do that in really simple ways. For instance, we hold a Christmas drinks reception exclusively for volunteers. In the first year that we did it, we wanted to think of a way of thanking them, but we knew we wouldn't be able to remunerate them and pay anything. So we tried to think of something we could do that would mean something. And it's just a small thing, but it actually means a lot. We give the volunteers an extra ticket to the Christmas concert. Now, that doesn't sound much, but tickets are at such a premium because space is really limited. So that made them feel like it was a really valuable thing that they'd received. So we were really delighted with that. We wanted to create a culture where volunteers feel welcome into the school with open arms, that they were treated professionally, and they were respected for their contribution. And what we found is that those volunteers then became our ambassadors within the community. I'll acknowledge Owen's point from earlier. There was a little bit of scepticism in school in the beginning in terms of how well it would work and what the value would be. But now we can't imagine life in school without our army of volunteers. A lovely example is the reading volunteer who the children call Nanny Rita. Nanny Rita listens to individual children read in foundation phase. They catch up on a sofa, and their eyes light up because someone is listening just to them, spending time just with them. Nanny Rita probably thinks it's the highlight of her week as well. It's priceless to watch those intergenerational relationships because it also highlights to me the value that a child places on individual attention. And without our volunteers, that individual attention is really hard to achieve. It would be disingenuous for me to say I've loved every minute as a volunteer and a governor at school, because school life is just so much more complicated than that. But if you asked me if I do it all over again, I'd say yes in a heartbeat.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I'm really glad that I bullied you into that. That was phenomenal. A really good example of a fantastically planned, well-supported and impactful volunteer programme. It just so happens it's in one of our schools, but that could be anywhere across the county. Just before we move on, and I go to the digital questions, has anyone got any questions they'd like to pose to Catherine while she's here? It's looking good. Thank you very much. Excuse me, 2 minutes, technical issues. So, I'd like to go back to Slido that I mentioned earlier. Can I just have a show of hands if you are able to access it? If not, I'm going to come round a piece of old school paper and dish it out. Yeah, so we've got a few. In terms of, this is one I did earlier, I've got 3 questions, and those 3 questions touch on a lot of what Peter and Catherine have said this morning. And the first one, which if you are on our Slido technical fantastic trial and you have typed in 4530, you should be able to now see these questions. They're under polls. If you can't, I'm just happy if you want to scribble the answer to these down, and I'll grab it after. But my first question to you is, please could you type in to Slido or answer on your old school post-it note one word to describe what volunteering means to you. So that's my first question. One word to describe what volunteering means to you. Okay, thank you. Could you try again? I've just opened those questions. It is working now. Thank you. It's just you, Lisa, I'm afraid. No, it's not, is it? No. Is there? There's lots, are there? Okay. There are a couple of questions here. She'll just technology. If that isn't working, we'll come back. We'll come back to that if that's okay. But I will just address a couple of these questions now before we move on. So there is one for you, Catherine, I'm afraid, that I didn't pick up. So you can stay there, but we will perhaps ask you to pop your mic on in a minute. One for me. In terms of Paul that didn't notice this, the conference is streaming from 9:30 until 12:30 today. So we're glad that Paul can join us online. And in terms of a question for you, Catherine, or perhaps Helen, whoever wants to take this, how did Catherine and or the school encourage volunteers who were willing but nervous to take part?
we offered support, really. No volunteer would come in by themselves. So if it was fruit cutters, for instance, there's 2 or 3 of them that would come in. They'd sort of be mentored by another fruit cutter before they started. In terms of reading volunteers, they have that session with school before they start, and that gives them the confidence then to be able to sit with the child. So nobody is asked to do anything without any kind of mentoring or support from school. So I think that would be, if they're willing, that is the biggest hurdle. And then once they're through the door, we can mentor and support them to stay.
That's lovely. Thank you, Catherine. Just trying to mop up these questions a minute. I think... and those polls, Lisa, definitely not working at the moment, are they? No, sorry about that. We're going to move on then, after that technical fail. Just a very, very quick one for everyone that may not be aware. In Monmouthshire, we have got a digital volunteer platform, and the basis of that digital volunteer platform is, one, we were told to get it by Wales Audit Office, which Pete alluded to earlier, but the more important point is we've been looking for some time to find how we engage with volunteers on a digital basis much more easily and communicate more effectively, and perhaps promote what we've got to offer, because we have hundreds and hundreds of opportunities that we can offer volunteers for them to share their skills, gifts and passions, but also to gain skills and maybe to grow as an individual. So if you haven't seen it, we've got something called volunteer.monmouthshire.gov.uk. What we use it for is to promote what we've got on offer, but also to capture all of our volunteer data. So by signing up for the system, a volunteer completes the application form. That is the sign up. The system can, if the volunteer has got references with email addresses, automatically generate those references. So that those are 2 things that you, as a volunteer coordinator, don't have to do. The other thing that it does really well is capture the impact that volunteer makes. So not just the hours, but the things that they've been involved with. And for some of our younger volunteers, they can simply click a button on achievements and they can pull off a social CV, which they can use to take to a job or to another volunteering opportunity. So that is volunteer.monmouthshire. We've currently, for partners in the room that certainly, Roggett Park, the park runs that have come today, they're looking at recruitment. We've got over 1,000 volunteers captive on that system. They often get messages of things that are the positive things within their community that they can get involved with. It might be useful for you to promote that. The other thing we can do is text and email our volunteers based on a group basis. So it is changing the way that we do things here. We acknowledge that implementation of it hasn't been perfect, so I will start with that. But what I was going to put a picture of him, but we've got a gentleman called Connor Leacock who works within our team. Lovely lad. He's in Benidorm on a stag do at the moment, so we've got our fingers crossed, haven't we, Sharon, that he does come back in one piece and without a criminal record. But the reason why I mentioned Connor is Connor is our support for this. So what Connor can do is support you to get on the system, to give you training, to walk you through it. But we overcomplicate things, quite frankly, with the system. We don't do that anymore. And for those that we've revisited, the feedback has been really positive. So what we can show you is how volunteers can sign up to the system, how you can organise and look after those volunteers, communicate with them, and ultimately, as Peter mentioned earlier, we're keeping everything safe because auditors do like to look at what we do. Like I said, we do stick out. We are doing things differently here, which means people want to see. So that is volunteer.monmouthshire.gov.uk. I think I plugged it enough now. Has anyone got any questions on that here and I'll switch to online as well. I'm conscious that it has been a hot topic. Just going to check my online questions a minute. Sorry, Catherine, there's another question here for you and Helen. Catherine, was this process supported as a whole school approach, not just the foundation phase? Also, was the general level of parent engagement increased as a result?
Yes, it was a whole school approach. The reason that I picked Fruit Party as an example, the foundation phase children have the fruit prepared for them, whereas in Key Stage 2, they have a fruit tuck shop. So we didn't need the volunteers in relation to that. But yes, in terms of reading, that's a whole school approach. So that's reception right through to year 6. Was there a second part to the question? Sorry, Owen.
Has the general level of parent engagement increased as a result?
Yes, I would say so. Over the years, it has. We've had a slightly tricky year this year, transitioning from head teachers. But overall, I'd say in the last couple of years, it's definitely increased parental engagement, yes.
Thank you very much. The final thing on Volunteer Kinetic, like you, Catherine, I'm going to get myself in trouble with Helen, sat by the side of you. We have been on a journey with Volunteer at Monmouthshire, and our star pupil is Helen at Goitra. She's really taken this system on, and bear in mind that they've got a huge amount of digital systems that they need to do, and if you spent any time in a school, it is non-stop attack on Helen from medicines to all sorts. So the way that Helen specifically has embraced Volunteer Kinetic and the results that she's now seeing from it, that's another public thank you, and me in trouble too. Please can I invite Jill and Gerald to the front, please. If you grab a seat near the mics, if that's okay. Okay. Following the theme of corralled, bullied into it, we've very kindly got Gerald, who is a volunteer with Volunteering for Wellbeing and the CAR scheme, I believe. Correct? And also Jill Cole, who is employed by Volunteering for Wellbeing. And for those of you that have heard me talk before, will know that this is something that we are very passionate about. Ash at the back there, I know, was instrumental in this development coming forward. So what we've got is a partnership with a third or voluntary sector organisation called Volunteering for Wellbeing. They're based out of Bridges. What they offer us and the county is one-to-one support and groups, for individuals that may like to start or continue their journey as a volunteer and would like some support with that. Aside from that, in a selfish way, us as Monmouthshire, what Jill and the team do is bring volunteers to us that have been supported, that have been recruited safely, that have got DBSs, references, and also been trained. And those volunteers are across our services. If this is something that you're interested in sat here, that's the reason why the contact details are behind in the introduction. So please get in touch with the team. But Volunteering for Wellbeing offer us a huge amount, as do the phenomenal volunteers that sit behind it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pose a couple of questions to Jill and Gerald, if that's okay. And we'll just get a little bit of a story. So what I will ask is if you've got any questions as well, feel free to chip in, either digitally if it works, or just stick your hand up, if that's okay. So would you mind, Gerald, just telling us a little bit about your journey into volunteering and perhaps a little bit about what you do.
In 2016, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, and I received treatment for that and chemotherapy. And while I was in the hospital, a volunteer came round, and the nurses were so busy, and just came round for a chat and a cup of tea. So I thought, I'll set something off in my mind. And then when I returned home, I was depressed and recovering. And somebody said, to go across to Mardy Park Resource Centre and have a chat with these lovely people. So I went along there, and they said, do you want to come along to one of the coffee afternoons? Because I was getting very isolated and finding things very difficult. So I went there and then met some lovely people from all ages. Then somebody said, would you mind, if you want, would you like to give a couple of people a lift to the coffee afternoon? So I started going regularly, and these were people like me and people in a really bad situation, very isolated, even though they lived in the town centre. And I noticed it made all the difference just getting out for those three hours a week. And from there I started befriending a couple of hours a week, which I find so rewarding on a personal level. And
things, don't you, Gerald? You do some nice things with your befriender.
Yes, I was befriended with an ex-gardener, and he's cultivated an interest with me, and we go to the garden centre for a cup of tea, and he talks about his problems and his good things and his bad days, and in terms of the structure, I was asked if I wanted to go to these courses funded by Bridges, and about safeguarding and various things, and I happened to go on the first Red Cross first aid course, and within a month another young chap, a volunteer, he used his skills, came across somebody dying, and he helped him and saved his life. And then the month after that, I happened to be driving along, and there was somebody very ill, and I put them in a recovery position and made sure of everything that I'd learned, and so it was really valuable for me. And then I started driving properly with the community car scheme, and it's been great, and see people build up relationships and help them, and on a selfish basis I get a lot of help too, and yes, family life has improved, and never haven't been happier in a long while, and it's just grown from something so small, and I hope long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. What an amazing story and a journey, and you must be very proud. I would like to add to that by just being naughty and asking you a question, Jill, if that's okay. And for that, you'll have to press your buzzer in front of you. What difference do you see Gerald make into people within the community?
I see a huge difference in Gerald. His confidence has grown so much since we first met Gerald. and he stays in groups sometimes and chats to all the people there, and very pleasant and really helpful. I've seen a big change in Gerald in your confidence and how you've been.
Yes, and I was at such a low point in my life, and I was so shy, and I was very nervous just about meeting for an formal interview, and it was just such a relaxed way. And they encouraged them to think that within 3 years that I'd be sitting here and addressing every. As you can tell, I'm very nervous, but it's just a positive thing all round, and it's and it's great.
What support, Gerald, have you had from Jill and the team to get into that volunteering opportunity and ongoing? You mentioned courses that you've done, which is fantastic, but how has Jill and others supported you from Volunteering for Wellbeing?
I'm just trying to think. Well, if any problems arise, there's always somebody there that I can go to speak to, and sorry.
These mics, Peter did warn us, didn't he? I just want to throw this open to the floor if there are any questions before we let Gerald and Jill off the hook. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to pose? Just going to check my digital in a minute. Okay, Jill, one for you. Oh, sorry, I've missed loads. I've missed loads. Two for you, Gerald, and then one for Jill, if that's okay. So, for Gerald, how were the training requirements raised with you, and how did you feel about having to undertake training as a volunteer?
I think I was always approached by Jill or Amanda, and they'd say, "Would you like?" They just invite me informally, no pressure or whatever, and they said, it'd be very useful, and I can see in a way that they really were. I could mention we had a course on safeguarding, and I was a bit reluctant because it was a very sort of a dry subject, and then as it happened, one of the ladies I give lift to, a dear old lady, she said, I've got some problems with my garden, so I came round and had a look, and I didn't know much about it myself, but and then a week later she said, somebody's offered to do my garden for me, and they're going just to trim the garden, a small garden, and they said, it's £900 to do it for about 30 minutes work or whatever, and she was actually going to pay that. So I went to Amanda and discussed it with her, and they got in touch. So it saved her being ripped off, and it's an awful thing, but it's made a difference, really.
Next question for you, Gerald, before we go to Jill, if that's okay. What would you say to other people who haven't thought about volunteering?
I just say go out and do it, and if the support's there, just go for it, really, because it's so rewarding. And before I was ill, I've had a high flying job or whatever, and And I've worked in a factory where there's people swearing at you to go faster, and I've never felt a job that's so rewarding and just so brilliant.
Thank you very much. One for you, Jill. What's important when you approach people who may be interested in volunteering or may not have even considered it? So what's important?
I'd say what's important is to take the lead from them. It is important not to coerce anybody or try and encourage somebody, but in the right way, is to listen to what they've got to say, and to find out what their interests are, because it's no good telling somebody that they can do this opportunity in a kitchen if they have no interest whatsoever in cooking. If somebody is interested in cars, to look for what opportunities there are to do with cars. If somebody is interested in people, what opportunities are available with people, for people. It's just to listen to people, really.
Thank you very much, Jill. I'm just going to read this one out, Gerald, because you can't see because you're your back to it. But Gerald, I think you're fantastic. What an inspiration you are. So that's someone that has mentioned that. I'd like to echo that. I think, like Catherine earlier, your inspiration and what you offer people in our community, we're all genuinely grateful for. And it's fantastic to hear about your journey and the support that you received. You know, again, it's about the approach, isn't it? As volunteers, we do need a little bit of support from time to time, but great things happen. So thank you very much for sitting up the front here. I'm nervous, so for someone to come on that journey and do that, I think we'll have a massive round of applause, please. Oh, sorry. Would the lady with her hand up at the back like to put it up again? Sorry, I completely missed you. My bad.
Is this working? All I was going to say was, Gerald, you've obviously achieved so much, and it just seems to me that the opportunities are endless for you. So you've sat here now in front of all of us. What's next? What's the next big thing?
Well, I was speaking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and it got me thinking. And I'd like to take us further, and I've applied to do an A level in College Gwent in, I think it's health and social care. So it's developing me as a person, but also I know it's self-centered, but before the volunteering, everything was self-centered and all about money and everything. But now there's a different side of life, and it'll be better for me in the long run. And I don't know, I may go into nursing, although I'm not getting any younger. But you know, in the long term, maybe become a nurse and do something that I really enjoy. Thank you.
Gerald, there are lots of comments on here, which I won't embarrass you and read out now, but I think perhaps I can show you in a little bit some of those. There's some really lovely comments and feedback for you. I think we've picked up all of the questions. So I think I'll do this by... visually. Some of you that didn't get a cup of tea or coffee this morning may be pleased to know that we are going into a coffee break. However, I have got an ask of you. So my ask is based around I'd like you to introduce yourself to someone that you haven't met before and just have a natter over what we hope is lovely tea, coffee and biscuits. And the fruit. Don't forget the fruit. So I'll call you back in. We've got about 10, 15 minutes for this. So this is about conversations. It's not just a cup of tea, although we all love a cup of tea and coffee. It's all on the landing, just out there. It is like Fort Knox, so if you struggle to get in and out, don't worry. We will come and find you, I promise. So tea, coffee, 10, 15 minutes, if that's okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, and everyone on the live stream. Hope you enjoyed the break. We are going to kick off straight away with another gentleman who very kindly has offered to share his volunteering story. So, Philip Mundell is a volunteer with Countryside, but I'm sure he'll tell us that he's involved in much more than just Countryside. In terms of the next session, after Phil starts in just a minute, what we will do is I've got a little bit of information and an ask for you around B Community and the Volunteer Achievement Awards. But also what we're going to do, because of, quite frankly, my technical failure, we are going to answer those questions, but we're going to do it in the group work sessions that we had planned. So we're going to split into 3 organised groups, and I've got some friends from our team that are going to help with that to capture some of it. So without further ado, Philip Mundell, do you want to join us at the front? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear? I can hear myself anyway. Good morning. Good morning, Owen. Owen's asked me to give a short talk on my experience as a volunteer with Monmouthshire Countryside. And my journey began 12 years ago when I decided to take retirement, early retirement. And I'd had a very busy career, and my time was packed. So approaching retirement, I thought I've got to find something that really, fills that gap. What am I going to do? I'd always been a walker, either with my dog or off on my own, whatever. And I thought, well, that's one thing I can do. Anyway, in the 6 months leading up to my retirement, I started making a list. This is the book. And in there, I put under, it all fell into 3 headings. Places to go, people to see, things to do. And as an aside, by the way, my wife found this notebook on my desk at home. And I overheard her on the phone one day to one of her friends saying, "He's got a book, of all the things he wants to do." I was horrified. I still got the book, and slowly I'm working through it. And under things to do, top of the list was more walking, more time in the countryside. And it's still there on the top. It has got a line through it at the moment, but I'm still walking and I'm still volunteering. The one thing I noticed when I picked this book up the other day was model railway. That hasn't been achieved, and that's something to do with using the dining table as a base for my model railway. Anyway, let's get back to the point. I retired, and a friend of mine was doing path surveys for Monmouthshire, and he said, "Why didn't you get involved?" And I thought, "Okay, I'll have a go." So I did the training, and off I went, surveying paths around the county. And for 2 years it was wonderful, because I was going to areas of Monmouthshire I would never have gone on my own, looking for paths, checking that they still existed, etc., etc. It was really good, but it was twice a year. I thought, well, 2 weeks twice a year really isn't filling my time. And then when someone said, "Well, why don't you train as a walk leader?" I thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll train as a walk leader. So I underwent the training and then started leading walks for Monmouthshire County Council. I'm still doing that. Then there was a change of plan in terms of what they were doing with checking paths, etc. So they said, so it was now a matter of, we're going to have promoted routes. Are you interested in dealing with promoted routes? Oh, yeah, I'll deal with promoted routes. So I did. I've got 2 at the moment, and we walk them 3 times a year, checking them. a saw and a pair of secateurs, clearing, whatever is needed. Really good. This is a bit like Topsy. Things started to grow, or it growed, as I think his book says. So after the guided walks, then we got into the festivals, the walking festivals. So it became Monmouthshire Walking Festival, which we did for 2 or 3 years, I think, which then morphed into the Chepstow Walking Festival. So I'm now involved with the Chepstow Walking Festival. And because I was involved with the Chepstow Walking Festival, I became involved with Chepstow Walkers Are Welcome. And my wife is now saying, don't you think you're doing too much? Don't you think you're spending too much time away? And I thought, no, actually, it's ideal. I'm out of the house. So I now coordinate path care for Chepstow Walkers Are Welcome. And I'm also a member of the Local Access Forum, which gives me a totally different insight onto what goes on behind the scenes in terms of countryside path care, etc. And last but not least, I'm now involved with, well, not now involved, I've been involved for some time with Walking for Health. Now, the Walking for Health scheme was set up in 2011 by Monmouthshire. They brought in consultants to organise it, to get it off the ground, and I was asked would I go out and check the paths, make sure they were suitable. Now, the principle behind the Walking for Health is that you need something fairly short, less than 3 miles, relatively flat, maybe one hill just to get the heart rate up, and if possible, no stiles. And I think of all the things I've been involved with, this is the one for me that is the most important. It's the one that I get the most satisfaction from. We started in 2011, as I said, in Abergavenny, checking out the paths around Abergavenny, and then leading walks, I think, for about a year. And then it was a matter of, we're going to open up Chepstow as well. Are you interested? So, yeah, of course I'm interested. It's right on my doorstep. So I started walking, checking the walks initially, and then we started going out with groups of people. We've been doing it now. In Chepstow, it started in 2012. We're still doing it today. I checked my files a couple of days ago. We've now completed over 300 walks. We go out every Monday morning. Now, for me, as I said, it's an extremely important element. The problem we've had this year is that the Welsh Government have decided to change the arrangements as far as funding is concerned. And we don't actually know what the new arrangements are. Originally, it was organised under Let's Walk Cymru through the Ramblers. And the Ramblers then distributed the funds to Monmouthshire and to the various other local authorities around the country. In March, I think this year, we had an email to say the funding was no longer available and it was going to stop. We wouldn't have any referrals from the local leisure centres under the GP referral scheme. So we were faced with disbanding the group. What happened in the end was that we went along to Chepstow Walkers Are Welcome and basically asked to be adopted. And fair play, they said yes, we'll take it under our banner, which meant that we also had the insurance cover, so we could continue. So we are continuing, and our numbers are growing. Every week we're seeing extra people come on board. That's not the case throughout the county, I'm afraid to say, because the other 3 groups in the county, which are Abergavenny, Monmouth, and Caldicot, are still going, but they're doing it under a social. As I understand it, under a social cover. In other words, there's no insurance there, and it means that the leisure centres can't refer because they haven't got the cover. As I say, you can tell that I'm really passionate about this, and it's something that's really important. Anyway, off the soapbox. For me, volunteering has been extremely rewarding. It's given me a sense of purpose, and it's filled a void that could have been there following retirement. And I've seen it with my friends who really haven't got enough to do. And for me, it's filled that gap. As long as you can avoid the politics and the obsession with technology, which I find can be really off-putting, I see it making a positive contribution to society, and the benefits outweigh the negatives. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions for Philip before we let him off the hook? I'm just going to check my digital questions a minute, Phil.
Great.
You'll be very glad to know.
Can I- Gosh, this is exciting, isn't it?
I managed to shut it down as you were abusing digital technology just now. Yes, you certainly can. If you wouldn't mind just pressing your button, Sue, please.
Hi, it's Sue Parkinson. I work in waste and recycling, but I used to work in Countryside. So I have been to quite a lot of meetings with Natural Resources Wales and others who are always talking about the benefits of and the connection between good health and well-being and countryside and walking and exercise and just being in the countryside and having access to the environment. So I'm amazed really that the funding has run out, and yeah, I hadn't heard about that, and I'm really sorry to hear it.
See, technology again. Yes, I agree with you. The benefits from walking in the countryside are immense, and you have to, you have to experience what goes on in these groups. It's not just a matter of physical benefits; it's mental benefits as well. And we've got people there who are carers, and the stress that they're under looking after aged parents, with dementia, etc., etc. And some mornings, one lady in particular, we'll be walking across a field. Her phone will go. Yes, mum. Yes, it's okay. Yes, mum. It's okay. Yeah, well, I have to walk. It means a lot to me. Just talking and saying, and then she'll say, I have to do this to keep my sanity. I have to get out here and walk, just to get out into the fresh air, get a change of environment. And then you get the people who are coming back from operations, and they've gone through the 16 weeks in the gym, and they want to continue doing something. And the change you see in their fitness over a period of a couple of months it's amazing. You get people who are on their own all week, who don't talk to anybody. And I've got a chap there, he's an old curmudgeon, who will often be walking alongside me and saying, just listen to him, just listen to the chatter, just listen. And I say, yeah, they haven't talked all week. This is what they want to do. And I'm amazed. I can't get to the bottom of what's going on. I'm told, the last conversation I had, I was told that the funding has been redistributed in some way, but I don't know how it's been redistributed. What I do know is it hasn't come our way. So we're just doing the best we can in order to keep this going. It is important. There's no question.
Yeah, I agree. It is really important, and well done for keeping it going. Voluntarily, without.
I'm not on my own, by the way.
It's
There are a group of us who are just as passionate and just want to keep this going. Helen and Chris, and we really are trying to get it going.
Yeah.
Trying
well
to
done.
keep
It's
it
important.
going.
Thanks.
I'll switch on.
Yeah. Just a digital question for you, Phil. As an active volunteer yourself, do you think enough is being done to encourage people to get outdoors? What do you think we could do?
It's a good question. The way it seems to work at the moment is more by word of mouth, with one member of a group saying to someone who may be outside the group, "Oh, we're looking for walk leaders." This is the case at the moment. We would love to have more walk leaders, more people supporting us. It's how would you get to these people? That's the question. I was fortunate because a friend of mine was already in the system, and once you get into the system, it's okay. You know, things, as you've seen, things start to flow to the point of getting out of control. But they do start to flow. They do start to flow, and you are involved. But it's getting people involved in that system in the first place. And I'm not sure how you do it. I know the problems that we've had where we've said, look, we need some extra support in leading, and it's quite difficult to work it out and to find out how to tag these people and get them involved in the system. Once you get them in, I don't think there's an issue after that. I think things start to flow, but it is just. I can't give you a solution. I wish I could. If I could, I'd have done it, a year ago.
Thank you. I think that gives those of us with a responsibility for that type of recruitment and promotion a very real challenge, doesn't it? Yeah, Kath, should we come to you next?
I was just wondering, you said about the funding being cut, and I'm sure other avenues have been explored, but I was just wondering what level of funding it is, because surely it's not a massive pot that you're asking for to be able to run that group. Do you know what level of funding it is?
I believe initially they were talking about, for Monmouthshire, £500 to cover the insurance. When we went to Walkers of Welcome, it was £110 for the insurance. I think that's what we paid.
So is that a per event you pay your insurance, or is it an annual? Do you mean?
That's an annual. That's an annual sum.
Yeah.
The point, we don't charge anybody. We use car share. We don't claim any expenses or any funding whatsoever. I would say to effectively run it, I know this is going to sound pathetic, you need £200. And I'm talking about things like leaflets. We're very fortunate in Chepstow. They've given us display units there, so we can use a display unit, put our programs up in the unit. But I would think overall, something around £200 per group would sort the problems out. It's nothing, but when it's not there, suddenly you're saying, well, what do we do now? Where do we go? Do we start knocking on the doors of Rotary and Round Table again? This sort of thing.
Thank you. This one is a question and possibly a suggestion for you, Phil. Have you visited the Gleeblands Work in Miniature Model Railway in Newport? It may save your dining room table and be of some interest to you. I love it. Absolutely love it.
I'll make a note of that. I'll make a note of it. Thank you very much.
Just last chance for anyone in the room to pose a question.
Just a couple of observations, really, Owen. One is, thank you for organising this morning. It's been fantastic, all the different stories and meeting all the different people. Just wider than that, really, just thinking that volunteering often has a kind of a do-gooder stereotype and perception perhaps amongst the community, and certainly what we've heard this morning is in complete contrast to that. And it's just interesting to me that certainly with Gerald and Phil's examples now, that the benefits they've had personally and in terms of how that then impacts on the wider social context and helps to build stronger communities and networks. And just in terms of finding those volunteers, it is incredibly difficult, but Catherine's example from earlier, certainly in my experience, that face-to-face contact on the school gate or friends of friends, someone who knows someone who knows someone. It tends to be the most effective way. But I think if there was more of an emphasis on the benefits to the individual of giving your time and the benefits to your local community and local networks, that might make people more likely to come forward, but it is incredibly difficult.
It's not, to be honest, not really something I've thought about. Obviously, there's personal benefits in the sense of just pure satisfaction, you know, and seeing the effect of it, you know, seeing what it does to people. How do you get that across? How do you get that across to others? I see it going back to what I was saying earlier. Getting people into the system at the start, that's the key. Friends of mine have just retired, 1st of June, and came to me 3 months ago and said, we're about to retire, we'd like to get involved. How do we get involved? Now, because of my links, my answer was, get in touch with Morag. Get in touch with Morag Sinton. I'll give you all the necessary contacts. You know, she's the one to, you know, who will get you into the system. In the meantime, if you want to come and help me, you know, I'll be very, very grateful. But yeah, as I say, you can tell from my responses, it's very difficult. The question is difficult to answer, and I hope, you know, we will stumble across something in the future.
Thank you very much for your input, Phil. Very humorous, honest, certainly given us and many people within this room some food for thought there, certainly around the finances, you know, the resilience and the tenacity of the group to continue. I think we've all heard this morning from all 3 volunteers of the benefits, not only individually to our organisation, but also to the community, for this absolutely phenomenal input. So, you know, on behalf of us here, Phil, I'd like to thank you very much. And I'd also like to, for those volunteers that do need to sneak off, I just want to say a huge thanks for what you've offered us today. You've given us so much to think about, and your stories are real. And I think that it really helps us as we all develop this going forward. So thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Phil. We won't tell her what you said, Phil. In terms of support, so we've talked a lot about volunteering and what's going on within Monmouthshire. We haven't. Oh, actually, I think Ryan's question perhaps posed that. We haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what could happen and what the vision is going forward. Those people that aren't involved, you know, volunteers, they are a strange bunch. They are not statistically the norm. You know, I think it's around 23% of people identify as volunteers. So what can we do to help people that may be interested in getting involved, but may not necessarily have the skills, the knowledge, the confidence, the behaviours in some case? What we've done in Monmouthshire is we've got something called Be Community. Some of you in the room have been on courses that we put on that have benefited from kind of one-to-one and links to partners. So we lead the programme, but this programme is absolutely about the community. And what we've got, or what we had, was £40,000 to invest in volunteer personal development, well-being, learning, training. What that means is we put out an offer pretty regularly of different things that you can get involved with. What we also do is work with individual groups, and we try to bring specialisms in. So we've got volunteers that are much better equipped and have better knowledge than someone in a badge, being paid to deliver a course. We've also got different experts from different areas and different partner organisations. So Claire and her colleague Sophie and Gabo, they deliver for us something around involving young people in volunteering. So if that's something that you're interested in as a volunteer or a community group or as a member of staff and you want to sneak in there, I didn't say that, then please let us know. Just as a taster, I don't know how well you can see that, it's not the biggest text behind, but in terms of the summer-autumn offer available through B Community, which to reiterate is free of charge for any volunteer or potential volunteer in Monmouthshire and rural areas in Newport, we've got things like, how do you inspire and lead people? If you've got a passion, a belief, I think this touches to what you said earlier, Ryan, how do you get people out of the house, not just once to a public meeting, but consistently? How do you put that message across in a fantastic way? We've also got things around mental health, and this has been something that incredibly well received. So it is accredited, the one course, and the other one is a shorter course. So we've recently run some courses for volunteers around youth mental health. They've just had their certificates, which is fantastic. So not only are people gaining skills, but they're also gaining qualifications, which could be a springboard onwards. The other bit is social media. Phil has gone now, so I'm able to talk a bit more openly about digital stuff without him getting me. Although it's live stream, so I'm actually still in trouble. Social media is a fantastic way for community groups. This is something that, Kath, you and Parkrun use phenomenally well. It is a way of engaging. Things have changed, channels have shifted, and people are sat on their phones a lot, looking through stuff. How do you create something that hits them here and makes them stop scrolling past all of those fantastic messages that we get there? How do you use video? How do you create events? So that's something that we do for volunteers. We have got a range of opportunities there, but we do also some pretty crazy things. So we're supporting the community boat at Goitre Wharf at the moment and helping them with their licenses, their boatman licenses. So actually what we can do is give them the training and the skills. As boatmen, they can then train and support other volunteers through that. So this is an investment, I suppose. What I'm trying to say is B Community is there. My question to you is, not for now, but this is one for you to ponder. How could B Community support the volunteers that you have within your area, within your voluntary group, within your school? I'd like to have that conversation with you. And my one ask from this little section is you've got a red and a black leaflet in front of you. A favour for me would be if you could you give that to someone within your family, within your community, within your organisation that may benefit from it. That's my first request. What we're going to do next is we're going to split into 3 groups. So I think what we can do is we can use this table here as one. We can zip around the back, and there are chairs where Kath is at the back, if you want to give us a wave, Kath. So there is some space there. But what we're looking for are three groups, and I'm going to pose the questions. We've only got about 20 minutes for this, but what we will do is feedback. We'll feed back to the main room. So if I just give you the questions again. I'll leave these up on the screen, but the first question is one word to describe what volunteering means to you. I've got some friends here, so I've got Rachel at the back, who's going to support with one group. Should we just ponder on Rachel for a minute while she gives us a wave? I'm in real trouble now. Sharon sat with the side of her, and perhaps Jude, if you wouldn't mind, I've got some paper here, if you can just capture some of that. So the 3 questions I'd like each group to ponder and answer are, one word to describe what volunteering means to you. Are there too many hoops to jump through to get volunteers started? Or if you're a volunteer, are there too many hoops were there too many hoops for you to get started? And the last one, has volunteering at MCC improved over the past 3 years? If yes, why? If not, we'd like to know also. So those 3 questions, I'm not going to give you numbers. I'm going to give you the opportunity to join a group. So we've got one at the back, one at the front, and one probably in the middle. Just to be clear, each group will do all 3 questions.
Should we go around that side or?
It is very wide.
Doing a similar role that I started in the park. And also, interesting to explain that I'm also a trustee of a community arts organisation. I'm a school governor and I feel like a general dog thinking with more sense of the community kind of groups and things. So, I get it.
I'm on the Shahouts Working Skills Wise Service, so my involvement in volunteering is to get some of our tenants that are interested in certain areas of work and training come to volunteer places that are appropriate.
Okay, I'm Cheryl, so I manage the community hubs in the north of Monmouthshire. That's council services, direct council services, and also the library service across Monmouthshire. And I recruit volunteers for service. And in my own capacity, I'm a litter picker in my own area. So I really love that because that gets me into my community. And I recently moved into a new community, so for me it was particularly beneficial because it sort of got me familiar with my community. So I feel much better. It's a health thing. And my community looks a little bit nicer when I've done it. So, yeah. I'm Jill. I work with Volunteering for Wellbeing as a volunteer engagement coordinator. I support volunteers in my day-to-day job and I work a lot with Gerald. I'm lucky in you. And in my spare time, I am a trustee of Mind Monmouthshire. Mental health trustee. That was quite new. So I used to work with them before and lovely job. Yeah. So yeah, keep my hand in. Yeah. I'm looking.
I think once you're hooked into these things, you never really leave. Gerald, we like we know you're inside language.
Would everyone mind returning to their seats or just swinging round either way, please? Thank you for taking part in those discussions. I suppose what would be really useful, and we got about 4 minutes to do this, is just for my friends that I mentioned earlier, just to give us a flavour, maybe, of the discussions, just very briefly. Rachel has very sternly given me hers and said I am not talking up there. So if it's okay, I will start with the back. And if I haven't interpreted this properly, because I've read it in the last 10 seconds, just shout to me. But what just to give you a flavour here in terms of the word that one word that describes volunteering, we've got opportunities, purpose, engagement, invaluable, community, noble, focus, employability. And one beast on the end, self-actualization. Impressive. So the second one was around the process for getting involved with volunteering, and are there too many hoops to jump through? Essentially, was the question. Which is it too cumbersome? So there doesn't seem to be too much issue with that. It's not complicated if you know the system, so I think that's a challenge to me and others to ensure that people have got the right information and the training. It can be prohibited and cumbersome. The kinetic system is needed, but it seems a little long-winded. I think something I talked about earlier in terms of our implementation of that system, we've learned a lot in the last couple of months on that. So this is like a to-do list for me, to be honest with you, this sheet, Rach, I like that. And once you use the system, it seems okay. So in terms of 3, has volunteering improved at MCC? And the reason for MCC is, we feel that we are part of this. We're not the whole. We are one rather large part of volunteering in Monmouthshire, so we want to get things right. So this honesty really does help. So this seems to be it seems to be buy-in from the top in terms of corporate. There are pockets of good practice that has been pulled together, which is useful. Unfortunately, we can't keep up with the demand, essentially, because we're busy, perhaps. And what shall I go with? There's a long list here. This is a nice one. Society has changed. Young people can now build experience and CV through volunteering. So that's fantastic. Thank you for that. All of this information, like I said, does go into my work plan and others. Should we go to you, Jude?
Absolutely. So, like others, we struggled a little bit to come up with one word, most of us, to describe volunteering. But so I'll give you a rundown. Some of the ones we came up with. So we talked about fulfilling, valuable, rewarding, a sense of belonging, co-beneficial. I think that was Cheryl's word. Change, as in being a force for change, being able to affect change, actually making a difference, I suppose. Pride, sharing. Social was a very important point about it being a social experience, and empowering as well. I think we could have come up with many more, given a bit longer. On the question of are there too many hoops, I mean, in summary, I think we both said, no, not really. I think the general view was that there are hoops there, but people understand why they are there, and there's lots of support to go through that process. However, there were a couple of points raised about kind of risk aversion, if you like, and about how, when things do come up on a DBS, for example, how you respond to that as an organisation, and not being overly risk averse. And also a couple of practical points, like, for instance, Cheryl raised about if the DBS has to come from over the border, if you're kind of looking at, say, Avon and Somerset Police, we've had examples of where that's taken a really prohibitive amount of time, and you've ended up actually losing volunteers because of the delay. So something about keeping in mind that often time is of the essence. If you've got somebody who's keen, you've got to be able to grab them at that moment. But overall, that was a set of positive feedback, I think. And then the last question about whether volunteering's improved at MCC, I think it was an emphatic yes, which is really good to hear. Particular mentions for the value of role profiles, about the partnership approach now, about working with other agencies, recognising where, you know, actually the specialisms exist outside of MCC and really tapping into those, and the sense of a kind of collegiate collective approach. So, yeah, very positive.
Thank you, Jude. Sharon, you're up.
Thank you. Okay. I think pretty much mirrors kind of what everybody's saying in the room here. One word, we did try and stick to one word, maybe a hyphen here and there, but we did stick to one word. But it's around viewing volunteering sometimes as a workforce and a positive and not a negative, but it's a positive thing to have people that want to step forward and fulfill that role on behalf of organisations. Self-sustainability, friendship, dedicated, committed, fulfilling, character building, things that are invaluable, community, positivity, and one that I think was quite powerful is priceless. It is priceless to the people who received who are on the receiving end of volunteering, but also what volunteers get from it themselves. So you can't put a price on that sometimes. In terms of hoops, I think, again, mirroring some of the conversations here, our processes can be very clunky, they can be time-consuming, they can cause anxiety for people who want to volunteer, and it's down to us then about how do we make sure that whatever those processes are, that they're proportionate. So for things like safeguarding, how do we manage somebody that just wants to show up for 2 hours and help out without having to go through all of the hoops of filling in this, that, and the other, but it being proportionate to the role that they're also fulfilling. In light of that as well, it's about, obviously, we need to pitch it to them in the right way so people aren't scared away by all the forms and different things that they might need. We need to sell it to them in terms of the benefits the group discussed, and making sure that people understand the reason why we need to do these things is as much about protecting them as it is about protecting the young people or anybody else that they might be working with. So there was a lot around that. We also had to take into consideration, we felt, some of the things why people might be anxious about the checks that we do, because it could be unearthing personal things that people are a little bit nervous about being unearthed, and not necessarily things that would be safeguarding concerns, but things that might exist in people's past they might be embarrassed about or not want to disclose. So that then led us into actually recognising that partnership support was crucial to this, and that kind of backstop of having your volunteer coordinator or your volunteer lead or somebody that is there that is able to support you, make sense of this and help you through all of that, cut through all the stuff and the jargon and all the bits and pieces that can sometimes get in a volunteer's way. They felt also that good communication, if it's poor, it's not very helpful, but if it's really good, then that can also help volunteers feel really valued in the role that they have. And again, some of the other things we felt can be a little bit hoopy or barrier to what they want to do can be around training. So we need to be very upfront sometimes about the training requirements, particularly if there's a lot of training. Somebody mentioned that there was a block of training that was 8 Saturdays were required in that role. That's an awful commitment for volunteers to give up. But actually it didn't stop people coming forward and undertaking that, which is a positive when they understood the reason why. And then also to understand when we are running training that it needs to be offered flexibly to fit in with people's time, so people are not always resistant to doing it, but they might not always have the capacity to fit in Monday to Friday 9 till 5. And then as for has MCC improved? Yes, they really love the courses that are being offered. People said that, thankfully, thank you all for the comments around the courses are amazing. To have that being offered to them as volunteers is really great. They felt the system was really helpful, particularly from somebody's point of view who is supporting volunteers. So it's making that process a lot easier. They know that it's not there yet, but they know that actually it's a fantastic place to be in at the moment for us to start to develop that as the guinea pigs going forward. They're quite willing to be that. And they do think that we're starting to make people feel valued in their role. So yeah, it's a really good conversation.
That's lovely. Thank you all for that feedback. That's fantastic. I think before we finish off, I'd like to welcome our chairman, Councillor Sheila Woodhouse, to the front. If you or if you'd like to, wherever you'd like to share your thoughts, to kind of close out today. We will finish a little bit earlier. I have got a couple of asks of you before you leave, but just as an introduction, Sheila is one of the most qualified individuals to talk on this subject because she wears many different voluntary hats. I know that from my community and from a professional capacity. And also, there is a focus as well for you, Sheila, for volunteering for this year. So, Councillor Sheila Woodhouse.
What an introduction. Right, can everybody hear me? I haven't sat in this front row before, so I feel quite important. But I have heard a lot this morning, and it's been so interesting listening to other people's roles as volunteers and the services that are needed to back that up. I am very passionate about volunteering, but I'd firstly like to thank Owen and his team for the organisation of this morning. I think it has been an excellent conference, and I hope everybody takes away something, a feeling that they feel supported and a feeling that they feel involved. So thank you, Owen, and your team. Volunteering is, as we've all been hearing, extremely wide-ranging, plays an enormous role in the everyday life in Monmouthshire. But what can I tell you about volunteering? Well, I started off by washing muddy football kit. My husband was running 3 junior soccer teams when we first got married. I married not only him, but 3 junior soccer teams and all their strip. He wouldn't allow them to take them home. He was afraid they wouldn't bring them back for the next game. And I didn't have an automatic washing machine. I say no more. That was a challenge. I then went on to become involved in setting up the local Mind group. I was a founder member. That's the National Association for Mental Health. We only had one charity shop in the town at that time, so we opened a Mind shop, which was quite challenging. I was working full-time, but we managed to get not only the Mind group up and running, we had some fantastic volunteers, but we opened this shop and ran that on a 6-day week. We've got lots of charity shops now, but that was one of the very first, so that was really, really heartening. I also belong to the WRVS, as it used to be called. It's now RVS, to be correct. But the local shop in our hospital, Neverhall Hospital, is staffed by volunteers and paid staff, and it runs extremely well. I'm having a little bit of a time off from that at the moment, but that is something that is a really good thing to be involved with, because as we all know, the WRVS support people in many, many different ways. Also in Neverhall, I'm involved with the League of Friends, where we have a coffee shop. I'm looking to volunteer now, mention no names. We have a team of 150 people to open that 5 days a week, 3 shifts, and it's all purely voluntarily run. We actually give back about £70,000 per year to the hospital. Each department come to us. We get lots of bids, as we call them, brought to us, but the committee goes through the bids and decides which they think is the most appropriate place to put, to contribute towards. So that's, and it's not only the actual money that we raise, it's the support. And as we all know, volunteering, people come along and they take part because they feel wanted. They're offering a service to people who we don't know what they're experiencing when they come to the hospital, but they're always very grateful for a smile and a cup of tea. And our volunteers like to be asked to provide that service, because some people are living on their own and they find it company and a friendship, to be honest. So, but I do believe volunteering is an instinct. We've all got it, whether we share our time with our neighbours, somebody's not well, we often go around and support them, do their shopping. I feel it's an instinct we've all got. And, whether it's just that little cup of tea to your neighbour, or doing something much more substantive in a larger role with a larger organisation, it is essential. And I'm just, as you can tell, totally passionate about it. I know that there are a lot of challenges. We talked about some in our subgroup earlier. We've got DBS checks, we've got food handling certificates. I could reel off a list. We spoke about them earlier in our group, as I say. And the fact that we now have places and support we have had previously, but we now know Monmouthshire focusing on offering that support. We heard about the B programme. That is really useful to know about, and other digital means. And all of that is about partnership working and knowing to go back to our groups and say, yes, you can get advice, you can get support, that we know where we can point you in the right direction, basically. And even the countryside gentleman talking about funding, we're all sitting there thinking, how can we offer him some support? There are grants, there are organisations, but it's all about working together and finding the right channels, is what I'm saying. So we heard a lot about that this morning. The way the council is constantly striving to link up volunteers, and it is a vital that along with health and safety aspects, the satisfaction of volunteers is taken into account. As I said, people volunteer for a variety of reasons. We've heard that, and we've heard some really very, very important information this morning firsthand. A great deal of hard work has been undertaken by Owen and his team, and some of the examples we've talked about this morning has been excellent. I can just say quote another example. The North Monmouthshire Area Committee, when I was chairman a little while ago, invited Owen to bring along voluntary groups. They've got a regular slot on the agenda. They come and they talk to us. Gavo was one very interesting session where we heard about all that they have to offer, very successful programs that Gavo have. And that is two-way, and that's what it's all about. It's being two-way. The council knowing that we can support people if we know quite frankly, what people are doing. So I hope we're all taking away some information and knowledge that will be of benefit. I don't need to talk to you anymore about volunteer. You're all passionate about it as I am. But thank you very much, and thank you, Owen.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Just to cap things off, and then perhaps I'll go to my asks again. What I hope you've got from this morning is some inspiration, some acknowledgement that there is support available for you, that volunteering is what we do here. We're passionate about it. And the reason for that, I think, I don't even need to go into. You saw and hear that this morning. So if this is something that we do and we are passionate about it, what I just want to say to you is that this is something that we are learning. We haven't got it right. You know, those group sessions were exactly for that. We need to do that with others. There are experts within the community, and it is fantastic that volunteers have been here today to help us shape this. I think that conversation continues. So I want to thank you for your time today, especially for those that have contributed in a wide range of ways to this. In terms of the asks, the first ask was the red and black bee community leaflet. So I would love you to give that to someone else. Instead of it sitting in the bottom of your bag and getting crumpled, I just want you to share that with someone so they're aware of that support that is out there. And as you know, that support can be shaped. The next one is we work with Claire Watkins, who sat at the back, who is a volunteer manager for Gavo, and her team to offer a formal recognition scheme and an evening, a lovely evening. In order for volunteers to be put forward for that, it relies on you, I'm afraid, putting them through either as a group or as an individual. There is an online nomination form. I think it takes about 5-10 minutes, Claire, something like that. If you need any support with that, Claire's number is on the screen there. Feel free to give her a shout. But every volunteer that's nominated receives a certificate. And as you know, volunteers will say, I don't do this for a certificate. The minute a certificate lands on that doorstep, I've received many phone calls from volunteers that are gushing with the fact that someone's taken the time to nominate them. So, please nominate for us. And the last one is, this week is National Volunteers Week. The theme of that is around saying thank you. So, the leaflet, the nomination, but the third one is on a personal level. I'd like you to consider this. You've got people that go over and above within your communities that volunteer, that do some phenomenal things. It could be sports clubs, it could be schools, it could be wider. Just think for me and perhaps offer them a thank you for what they do. The reason for that was everyone that has sat at this table today, I think, has given you an understanding that the skills, the knowledge, the gifts and the passion that they offer our communities is invaluable. Perhaps just extend a thank you, a text or a tweet or whatever it may be. But to finish, thank you for your input today, and see you all soon.